it has to be frictionless, it has to be adiabatic, it has to be incompressible, and it doesn't have any rotations happening within the fluid. It's non-rotational fluid. So when that is not there, friction is not there, means energy is not gone. There is no losses. Suppose if it is frictionless and all, the frictional term with the loss term will come into picture, plus H1, H plus head loss will come into the picture. Okay, so for the time being, we assume that the total energy remains constant, but the individual components will vary. For example, it is P1, this is pressure energy, PR I am writing, plus potential energy, P0 E I am writing, plus velocity energy or kinetic energy. So 1 is equivalent to PR E2 plus your P0 E2 potential energy plus your velocity head or velocity energy processed due to velocity. The only change is here, if it is a horizontal pipe, the potential head, that means the height H1 or Z1 should be equivalent to Z2. Therefore, this energy will not change. Z1, Z2, Z1, Z2. This term, potential energy, will be gone. The remaining things are these two, the potential energy and the velocity energy. Okay? So these are dependent on the cross section of the tube. Suppose if the cross section of the tube goes like this, that means it is converging. Then there is a drop in the pressure from P1 is here and P2 is here. Therefore, what happens? We have another expression called the continuity equation. To satisfy this equation, what happens is your pressure will reduce, but your velocity, whatever the drop in the pressure, it will convert into velocity. Okay, so here P2 is greater than V1, whereas P1 is greater than P2. Whatever the drop that is happening in the pressure will be converted into the velocity, into the kinetic head. Obviously, the total energy here and here will remain constant. Okay, so from this, what we can understand is the pressure differential flow meters. Okay, these are the flow meters which are dependent on measuring the pressure differential, that use reduction in the area method are called as obstruction meters. Okay, so those flow rate meters which utilizes the calculation of pressure differential between 2 points by changing the area or by reducing the area is called as obstruction meter. Hope you understood. So here these methods are called as head meters. These meters we are calling them as head meters. So what is happening here? What is happening is a head loss or a pressure drop measurement is taken as an indication of the flow rate. So now obviously what is how do you write? Q is directly proportional to P1 minus P2 whole power n. So based on the classification of a flow whole power n, where n is equivalent to 1 for laminar flows. You know what is laminar flow, and n equivalent to 1/2 for turbulent. So under root it will come for turbulent flows. So again, in these flows, apart from laminar and turbulent, what is the other classification that we need to consider is the compressible effects. When we have a compressible fluid flow, how do you use the flow meter? What kind of a flow meter you use, and what are the equations that you use? And suppose if it is an incompressible fluid, what kind of measurements that you use? Since this Bernoulli's equation that we are using is for incompressible fluid flow, we generally use this mostly use these things for liquids, which are whose Mach number is less than very much different. So now we will try to see how this expression will come, how they are related to each other, how the discharge is related to the pressure drop. That is what we are trying to look at. So here we have two equations. One is the Bernoulli's equation And if we don't have a head loss, then we have a continuity equation here. This is the continuity equation, where you are seeing that rho 1 A1 U1 is equivalent to rho 2 U2 U2. The only difference is if it is an incompressible fluid, what does that mean? It means that rho 1 becomes equivalent to rho 2. The density will not change when it is moving from this position to this position, or when there is a change in the area also. Even then the compressibility effect is not there. That means rho 1 is equivalent to rho 2. It's not significant. Okay, that significance is defined by the Mach number. Okay, what is the Mach number? Based on that, we classify a flow to be compressible or incompressible in nature. So rho 1 is equivalent to rho 2. So this 2 will go away from the continuity. And so what is left over? A1 U1 is equivalent to A2 U2. So any of these velocities you will be able to find out. Suppose if you are finding U1, it is nothing but A2 by A1 into, okay, this is the relation that we have between this just trying to take out everything on slides. So we have this expression that we are getting. All right. So we have a relation rho 1 A1 is equivalent to A2. So now try to write down that from this expression, try to write down what is P1 minus P2 by this expression I am trying to write. Okay, now let us write down this expression. Now this can be written as P1 is P2 by, can I write rho 1 or rho, because rho 1 is equivalent to rho 2 is equivalent to the same, because it's an incompressible. So it is nothing but U2 square minus U1 square by, correct? So since you know that what is U1 and U2, okay, the relation between U1 and U2 you know, so therefore substitute either U2 or U1 in terms of A1 and A2, okay, whatever you want. So that will give you what is the ideal equation, discharge equation, you know, yesterday in the lab also we discussed that may be A1 U1, that is area 1 at the area at the location 1 into its velocity, or area 2 the location 2 what is the area, and at that location what is the velocity. So that will give you your ideal. So this is for steady state. Okay, so A1 U1 is equivalent to A2 U2. I taken A2 U2. So now we have A2 here, and from this particular expression, from this particular equation, you can find out U2. Okay, let us try to find out what is U2 here. Okay, P1 minus P2 by either rho 1 or rho. Okay. So now I will try to write down what is U1 here. Okay. So what is U2? U1 is equivalent to A2 by A1, assuming that this rho 1 into 2. So substituting this U2 square minus, what is U1? A2 square by A2 by A1 square into U2. Right? So this will be nothing but P1 minus P2 by rho is equivalent to U2 square by 2 into 1 minus A2 by A1 whole square. Correct? This is A2 by A1 whole square. So now I'm trying to find out what is U2. So this will make you U2 is 2 into P minus P1 by rho divided by 1 minus A2 by A1 square, whole thing under square. So the same thing I'm writing it over here. Okay, square root 1 minus A2 by A1 square into 2 by rho P1 minus. So this comes from that expression. So if you look at the equation, ideal equation here, it is directly proportional to P1 minus P2. Okay, since rho is the density of the fluid, which may not change within the range of the measurement, which we generally consider to be constant for incompressible fluids. If it is a compressible fluid, we will see how we can solve or how we can use this equation to convert, or how can we use this particular meter to we will make that to the equations useful in such a way that we measure the ideal. Okay, so the area A2 is the location where you are reducing the area, and A1 is the initial area of the pipe. Okay, so this is basically your ideal case because you have not taken any losses into account. So here you are taking that it is a frictionless pipe, but is it possible to have a frictionless pipe anywhere? So it is not possible. So therefore, in general, we will have some energy losses which will be accompanying due to friction. Because of the friction with the lines of the pipe, or due to the viscosity of the flow, we will have some energy losses. So here, naturally, the ideal case, we will not consider any losses. The ideal case, we have not considered any losses. But when we actually measure that with the help of a meter, the values are different. Whatever the discharge that we will be getting is different from whatever we are calculating from the mathematical. So what we are trying to do here is, for any meter, any ideal flow obstruction flow meter, we will try to find out or we will try to define a particular coefficient called the discharge coefficient, which is nothing but Q actual by Q ideal. Q actual by Q ideal. Therefore, how do we find out? Q actual is equal to CD, which would be given by the manufacturer itself. After doing a lot of experiments, they will find out what is the CD value for. It depends on the material, it depends on the geometry of the obstruction flow meter. Based on that, they will give you what is CD. Okay? So this coefficient of discharge you will know into its Q ideal. So whatever you are assuming that without losses, this will be taken care of. So that will give you the coefficient of discharge. Can anyone tell you what is the range of CD here? Will it be greater than 1 or will it be lesser than 1?
Less than 1. Less than 1.
Less than 1. So that means it actually, the actual value is definitely is going to be less than the ideal case. Okay, it cannot be going beyond ideal case. In general, it will be less than the ideal case. Now we are defining few other terms just to make sure that this incompressible equations can be used for the compressible flows also. So simplifying this, what we are trying to do is this particular, let me first clean it up so that it will not be clumsy. Excuse me. So now I'm defining few terms in the equation, ideal gas equation. This particular term, 1 minus A2 by A1 square. I am defining this 1 by root of 1 minus A2 by A1 as velocity of approach factor. So just for simplification, we are using this for our simplification process. We are saying that this is a value which we call it as. And then we also are trying to find or define another term called as flow coefficient. Flow coefficient K, which is nothing but K is nothing but CD into M. Now where does this CD into M will come? 1 by 1 minus root of A2 minus A1 square is M, and we are using CD term here. So CD into this M value, we are calling that to be flow coefficient. Okay. And finally we have the diameter ratio, the small diameter by the capital diameter. So wherever there is a reduced diameter, which you will be taking a small d, and the initial diameter will be d there. So therefore the area 2 by area 1, I am taking it to be beta. So this particular term, I am taking it to be beta. So these are all in the expression Q only, this will all come. Q actual, we can write in terms of K M into this particular expression. A2 into 2 by rho, this particular expression. Okay, this is just a simplification. Now we will look at different flow obstruction methods. Sorry. Different obstruction methods like venturi, flow nozzle, and orifice. Depending on our requirement, we will kind of select this kind of. So when it comes to flow obstruction methods, the first and foremost thing, or necessity, foremost necessity, would be what can be the factors which determines the selection of the flow obstruction methods. What may be your requirement? We have already discussed this. Suppose you are an engineer and you have an application, and you have that application, you need to find out the flow meter, and everyone wants the measurement to be very precise, but when you want to go for precise measurement, the cost would be higher. And what range you are taking into consideration? Is it a very low flow rate or a very high flow rate or a medium flow rate? Okay. And what is the availability of that? How much maintenance is required? So these are all the factors that come into the engineer's mind while selecting an obstruction. So the first and foremost is the precision, and then the other one is the cost constraint. These are the major things based on which, there are other factors also, but these are the two important factors based on which an engineer has to consider which obstruction method he has to. Okay, when it comes to the design of this venturi meters, these obstruction methods, the first one is the venturi meter, which is having, you can see over here, there is a gradual decrease in the cross section, like this, slowly. So initial area is D1, and then there is a throat, okay, it's constant area, and then it slowly diverges. So the angle of inclination, the angle of convergence is steep, high, whereas the angle of divergence is very small value. This angle is very small. Okay, and then it becomes to the normal flow. First and foremost thing, for why do you use this venturi meter of obstruction meters? Why do we require this obstruction method? First of all, see, in pipe flows, sometimes we will not go at the end of the pipe, and we can measure with the help of a measuring flask and all. What if we don't have this facility? So there is a long pipe, and I want to know, without breaking it anywhere, I want to find out what is the flow rate within the pipe. How can I measure that? So for that reason, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to find out this kind of the flow meter. Okay, obstruction flow meter. What we will do, we will try to insert this flow devices into the pipeline, and therefore without disturbing the flow, actual flow or the configuration of the flow, we are trying to measure the flow. Okay, so now I have joined this to the pipe, joined this to a pipe, and if you can see here, the diameter D1 is almost equivalent to the inlet pipe, and while it is leaving also, the D2, the D3 here, if you see there, the exit, that is also equivalent to D1. So why we have done like this? Here we have reduced the area to a very small value, very small value like this. Therefore, the pressure energy, there is a pressure differential that comes into picture, and correspondingly there is a local increase in the velocity of the flow. When we consider V1 and V2, V2 is considerably higher than V1, and when you consider P1 and P2, P1 is considerably higher than P2. So this happens over here, and then when you smoothly diverge this section to the normal diameter of the pipeline, the pressure again recovers back to P1. So that your velocity V2 again recovers back to V1. So what we are trying to do here, we are keeping an obstruction meter, varying the energies by somewhat, and with the variation in the energies, we are trying to find out what is Q. But ultimately, whatever the pressure line, the pressure and velocity, whatever we have before the meter, we are trying to adjust. We are trying to get the same thing after the meter also. So, in a sense, what we are trying to do is we are whatever disturbance in the energies that we have created by the insertion of a obstruction meter, we are trying to bring that back to its original conditions after the flow meter. So therefore, your energy loss is not that high. So therefore, Venturi meters are very, very accurate measurement devices. They are very accurate measurement devices compared to many other obstruction meters. Am I clear? Am I clear? There is a pressure recovery that happens over here. Clear, sir? Why this pressure recovery happens? We will see when we go to flow nozzle and orifice. We will see. Okay, why they have become. So now, if you want to have a very fine convergence and very a properly fabricated diverging angle and all that, very high surface finish to reduce the turbulence and all, we need to incur higher, very efficient fabrication methods, and that involves a lot of cost. Correct? So Venturi meters are generally very costly in nature, and they are very precise compared to the other flow meters. Therefore, when your requirement as an engineer is the precision of the measurement, precision in the measurement of flow rate, without having any constraint on your budget or without any constraint of cost, then we can safely go for a Venturi. Okay, and the maintenance for these Venturi meters are not that high. Again, we need to measure the pressure difference. How do we measure the pressure difference? We will have a U-tube manometer from the initial conditions to the throat, whatever the lowest position we are having at the throat. So we have a U-tube manometer, and so these are the pressure tappings that we will connect. Okay, pressure tappings that we will connect. And the general basic rule is that the pressure tappings openings are much smaller than the diameter of the pipe. Okay? So that is what we have to consider, so that there will not be higher uncertainties in the measurement of flow. Okay, and the ASME standards, ASM, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, they have given the standard dimensions for designing the Venturi meter, and I'm not going into deep of those things, but I am expecting you to have a look at that and remember. Even if I give in the examination, I expect you to write, because it's an open book. You should be able to verify and write down in the examination. Clear? So let us move on to the next flow obstruction method. We will immediately go to the orifice. What happens with an orifice? So an orifice, you can see this, there is a small central hole that comes in. There is an obstruction that is happening. That means in a pipeline, what is happening is we have a circular thing with a hole. Okay, so this is the side view. This is what we are seeing from the side view. This obstruction, I am keeping it here. This hole is equivalent to this size. Okay. So if you look at this, what you can observe here is there is a sudden change in the dimensions. Correct? There is a sudden change in the dimensions. Correct? There is a sudden change in the dimensions. Now let us assume that the flow is happening like this. The flow is happening like this. So it has to immediately rotate. So that means initially it will rotate like this. Okay, it has to sharply go. But over a period of time, how it will transform is like this. This is the opening that we have. Okay, so now there are vortices. That means there is a stagnation of flow that is there. So this will not move out along with the flow. Instead, whatever the flow that is passing through this it will try to rotate the layers in this choke, correct? So while it is moving, it has to impart some energy to these vertices. So there will be rotations of this, there will be rotations you could see like this. Okay, so because of that, what happens? Some of the energy to rotate these fluid layers is given from the flow. So that is basically a loss. So when the flow comes back and becomes normal to the normal diameter also, you can say over here, you can see vertices here and vertices here. So even then, if it comes over here, the energy, when you write the expression of Bernoulli's equation, pressure head less velocity head is equivalent at location 1 is equivalent to pressure head plus velocity head plus at 2 plus head loss due to friction. So some energy is already gone. So therefore, whatever the initial conditions that I have, I will not be able to get the same initial, because some energy is lost in the friction losses. So your P1 pressure energy will not be the same as P2, and your V1 will not be the same as V2. So that means there is some variation in the flow. So there is some energy loss that is happening. So that's why this orifice made. But if you look at the fabrication wise, what is that you require to fabricate this? A circular opening which is inserted. That's it, nothing more. So your cost is pretty low, but it will not be very accurate. The orifice meter is not very accurate. You are able to understand what I am trying to convey. So what I'm saying is, in a pipeline, it is mandatory. Even if you put an instrument as a measurement student, you should understand that whatever device you incorporate into some measurement thing, the initial condition and the final condition should not be varied because of the inception of this device. That actually tells you how accurate or how precise your instrument is. If it alters the properties or either physical parameters or the properties of the flow, then obviously your instrument is not that accurate. That is the simplest logic that you can. Okay, now let us move on to the flow nozzle. What happens in a flow nozzle? You can see over here, in a flow nozzle, instead of having a sudden change, you are having these flanges which are bent nicely. But these are only up to this. There is no diverging thing over here. Okay, just we have a sheet like this. Okay, so the flow will come and it smoothly will go like this. So even though there is a small space, that vertices are very less in nature, and it will move like this. Okay, so this is basically your flow nozzle. Okay, but what is the use of this flow nozzle? It is able to measure the flow rate, but the problem is at higher pressure ratios. So when the P1 and the P2 minus P2 becomes greater and greater, we will come to a condition where we say that it is choked. For the inlet conditions, it gives the maximum flow rate. It cannot go beyond that. After certain pressure ratios, even though you vary the pressure ratio, it reaches its maximum. It cannot go beyond that. So that means it reaches its sonic condition. So you cannot go beyond that. So always we have to make sure that your pressure differential will not go beyond the sonic conditions. So that is clear. And when it comes to the flow nozzle, it is better than orifice meter, but less efficient or less it is less accurate than the venturi. Again, I am repeating, you have to go to the textbook and look at the ASME standards for the design of these venturi meter, flow nozzle, and orifice meter. Okay, so now, as I have told you, sonic nozzle, works on the nozzle. It works on the principle of choked flow in a venturi or converging diverging. So a venturi meter is nothing but a nozzle. If you are having both converging and diverging section, so in a nozzle, then we call it as a venturi meter. Otherwise, if it's only converging section, that means what I want to say is, if it is only converging section, we call it as a nozzle. If it is having a converging and then diverging section, then we are calling it as a venturi. So for compressible flow, so if the flow is compressible, that means your density is varying with respect to the conditions. Under isentropic conditions, velocity of gas at throat becomes equivalent to the velocity of sound. So therefore, what we are calling it as the velocity ratio, the pressure ratio P2 by P1 should be always less than or equal to. This is the sonic condition. So 2 by gamma plus 1, gamma by gamma minus 1, where P2 is the throat pressure and P1 is the initial pressure. So the pressure ratio we will always look to be in this particular range, around this particular range. Okay, so this condition is called as the critical pressure ratio or choker condition. This particular, when this pressure ratio follows this, whatever the fluid that we are using, we know it's gamma Cp by Cv value, gamma equal to specific heated constant pressure by specific heated constant volume. You know this value. So when you substitute this, you will know that the pressure difference between the two sections, P2 and P1, this has to be less than the critical pressure ratio. Below this, the flow rate only depends on the upstream condition and becomes independent of the pressure downstream. So whatever the pressures we are using in this particular, less than this particular range, then it is dependent only on the upstream conditions. It no way considers whatever is happening in the downstream. Downstream means this. Whatever be happening in the downstream, it doesn't affect the measurement over. This will not affect the flow rate at this particular condition. If we go beyond that, then it will affect. Okay. So therefore, the mass flow rate choked. So that means whatever the mass flow rate at this critical ratio, if we substitute this into that wherever the P2 is there, if you substitute that into the expression that we have seen for Q, as yesterday I told, Q is equivalent to area into velocity, and your mass flow rate is equivalent to rho AV. You have to multiply that with your density, so rho Q. So if you substitute that into that expression, you will end up with this mass flow rate condition at the choke. Okay, so I'm telling you the discharge coefficient, whatever the discharge coefficient for each type of the obstruction meter will vary with the position of the pressure trappings, how we are keeping. And I'm requesting you all people, please don't wait for the exam or only study for the sake of examination. Just go through the Hallman book. They have nicely given the details. How do we position the this pressure tappings? What should be the design? How much one diameter before the throat? One diameter before the throat, we have to keep the pressure tapping. A venturimeter. For example, suppose this is a venturimeter. So if this is the diameter, so let us say that this diameter is 30 mm. So 30 mm before the throat, we have to keep the pressure tapping. And the second one, I have to keep at 1.2 diameters, 1.2 times the diameters. Okay, so 1.2 into 30 is where I have to keep the so I have given a sharp here, but it will be slightly different. So 1.2 times the diameter means 36 mm. I have to use the, after this particular thing, I have to use the other limb of the U-tube model, other pressure tab. So for getting the accurate measurements. So for compressible flows, as so far whatever we have seen is basically for incompressible flows. Suppose if I want to use these instruments for the compressible flows, by doing some small corrections into the equations, we get an additional factor, what we call it as an expansion factor. So what we do is we calculate the expansion factor y and we introduce this term into the mass flow rate equation. So whatever the expression that we have earlier, the extra term is multiplied by, so mass flow rate incompressible, for example. So this is the mass flow rate incompressible equation that should be multiplied by an expansion factor y to get the mass flow rate of the compressible. That is what we will do for using the same. That means if whatever the device that we are, venturimeter, whatever we are using for measuring the liquid, we will use this mass flow rate equation, and if it is multiplied by the expansion factor, we can also use that for gases, for measuring the flow rate in the gases. So it is given here if a flow meter is to be installed downstream from a valve. Okay, so if I'm trying to install a valve or elbow or other disturbance, so you can see here 10 diameters of the straight pipe are required for ventilating. Suppose there is a valve condition. Suppose in a pipe there is a valve like this. There is a valve like this. It creates unnecessary laminar flow will not be there. So some disturbance kind of thing because pressure difference will be there. So what he's saying that is approximately 10 times the diameter of the pipe. Okay, 10 times the diameter of the pipe, we have to install the okay, and up to 40 diameters for orifice meter or flow. Suppose if it is orifice meter, if you want to use orifice meter or nozzle, we have to use 40 times the diameter away from the pressure trappings, valves, elbows, and other disturbance. So otherwise, this flow meters will incur heavy pressure loss. If you don't follow these things, suppose after the valve, immediately after 5D, you put. So not naturally, you will see there is a large pressure difference that will be seen, and your measurements are not very accurate. Okay, so that is all about the obstruction flow meters, which we see in our industry or in our academia mostly. So we also have another important flow meter which we will come across in our day-to-day life is the rotameter. The rotameter, which is very accurate measurement here. So here, what is the principle based on which this rotameter works? So a flow meter device. So this is also a flow meter device. So from the bottom, water will be, the pipeline will be connected like this. Wherever you want to find out, the pipeline is connected from the bottom. And you can see that the opening is tapered in nature. Whatever the capital D and this D are different. Okay, it's tapered in nature. So from bottom to the top, it actually diverges its area. And you have a bob or mass. So this is the bob that we have. So some weight, some metal which is having some density is kept over here. And the water, while moving up, there will be a weight of this will be acting downwards because of this weight. And we also have the buoyancy effects. Okay, so now the friction drag, so the flow while moving on, it applies some friction on the surface of the bob, which would be balanced by both the weight of the bob as well as the buoyancy force. Okay, so you can see that this is the buoyancy force and this is the friction drag, or the friction that is created due to the drag effects. So it would be balanced by the weight. So weight will be acting downwards and drag force will be acting upwards, which is related to this term. And again, the buoyancy force, which generally takes care of the weight of this. So imagine here, you can see here the buoyancy force and the weight are just deferred by the density of the bob is taken for the weight, whereas the density of the fluid is taken for the buoyancy force. So those are the two things. Okay, so this balance, this energy balance, the weight balance will give you the force balance, not the energy balance. It's the force balance that helps you to measure the flow. So depending on this balance of whatever the buoyancy and the friction drag, based on that, this will come to a particular position, and there are graduated scales kept over it, so that you will be able to find out what is the flow rate that is happening indirectly. Okay, so you can see here, this is rho f is the density of the fluid, Vm is the mean flow velocity in the annular space. So whatever this is flowing, whatever the velocity with which it is moving, that is basically your Vm square, and Vb is the volume of the bob, whatever the volume of the bob it is taking. So this particular friction drag, this is basically what it is doing. This friction drag is directly proportional to the area. Okay? Your area is dependent on the annular surface area, which when it is varying, then only this value will vary. So therefore, depending on the position of this bob, we are actually graduating that on the scale of the rotor. So under balanced conditions, all the terms are fixed. When it comes to an equilibrium position, suppose there is certain amount of fluid that is passing through. This initially this is at this position. When there is no flow, this is at this position. Because of the force that is applied by the fluid, it rises, and there is an equilibrium position that comes when the weight is balanced by both the drag and the buoyancy forces. So there it stays still. It comes to an equilibrium position. So from the previous expression, you are trying to find out what is Vm. So this is the expression that you are finding for finding out the velocity of the fluid. And therefore, the volume flow rate Q is given by Vm into area of the fluid. Okay, so what is AF here? It is given here. Area of the flow. So AF is nothing but your area of the flow. Okay, so that will be what, wherever this flow takes place, the tapered annular spacing, so that will be your area of the flow. That will give you the Q. And this directly is measured, directly is kept over this scale. Okay, area available per flow. So area available for flow, how we are calculation pi into d of y square minus d square by 4. So y is the how much vertical distance we are having, diameter of the tapered tube at position y. So what is the diameter at this location? That is d of y. Okay, d of y minus d square, small d square is the diameter of the bob. Okay, diameter of the tapered tube at entrance. So if you put like that, then you will be able to find out the area of the flow. So how do you find out the diameter of the tube? It is a function of the inner opening d plus 2y. 2 into y is the vertical position into tan alpha. It's a simple geometrical mathematical equation. If you draw the trigonometric equations there, then obviously you'll be able to find out how you get that diameter of the so that is what we have. So by keeping those expressions in the AF value, so area of the flow value, whatever d value that we are getting from this expression, I am keeping it into AF. So you will be getting this particular value. So we have 2y tan alpha whole square. So neglecting the non-linear term, whatever the non-linear term that is there, if you plus d square plus 2y square tan square alpha, 4y square tan square alpha minus plus 2d y tan alpha, that extra term if you are taking out and writing down the remaining terms, we are getting pi by 4 capital D square minus small d square plus pi y capital D into tan. So this is what we are trying to get. So this will give you the area of the available flow, and when you substitute that in the expression Bm into area of the flow, you are getting this is the final expression. So all the terms we know. So based on these values, wherever y is there, depending on the area of the angle and what is the capital D, and all other things are same. What is the area of the bob? What is the coefficient of friction? So based on that, we are graduating depending on each location of y. We are saying that this is this much Q. So this is 10, 11, 12, 13 liters per second or something. In terms of that, you will get. So generally, usually we do D equivalent to capital D in the construction. So we will be able to measure this. So as we have found out, here also another expression is given for the discharge, which is nothing but K into Y. So here K is nothing but the whole term. Here whatever the term we are converting that into K into Y kind of a thing. So where K is to VBG, the same thing. Whatever you are seeing over here, the same thing I am writing as K into Y. So this expression shows that what this expression will tell you is, ninth expression, what it tells you is that volume flow rate Q is directly proportional to the position of the bob inside the tapered tube. Q is directly proportional to Y. So in the tapered tube, what is the location of the bob is what tells you directly here. So Ki is calculated by this, which is given by this expression. So simplifying few terms, we are writing that in the terms of this. This is how the volume flow rate is being measured by means of this particular autometer. Okay, so we will see in tomorrow's class or in our Monday class, we will see how the pitot tube will work, what is the pitot static tube, how hot wire manometer is used to measure the flow meter, Doppler velocity meter, laminar flow meter, and thermal mass flow meter in the next few classes. Any doubts up to this, you can ask me. We have 3 more minutes. Guys, are you feeling kind of bored or something? Because it's kind of more of PPT presentation. Are you feeling bored of this class? Since many of you may feel that this can be easily read why there is a class or something. Or is it okay? When, as I told you, the initial things are a little difficult, which you might be finding interest, but in measurements class, the problem is it's more of the working principles based on which we are devising this meters and all, various measuring meters and all. So the working principle, if it is a direct classroom or offline mode, I might have given these questions directly in the examinations to explain the principles and all. That is what we want to test. But since it's being online, I cannot directly give those questions in the examinations. So probably, even though I am spending more time on explaining the working principles, when it comes to the exam, it may not be reflecting in the exam. I am giving problems or some other. So probably the students in general, they tend to, they want to score more marks in whatever they study. But I tell you people, please go through the essence of it. Don't just think that whatever I'm teaching is from the textbook, and it's basically explaining the working principles. And these are straightforward things. Okay, so basic force balance or something we are doing to devise a. But what makes you get interested is, suppose if you want to measure a particular velocity or a particular range, how do you think to measure that? Okay, so in those sense, if you think, this subject will become interest. So our primary quantities that we measure are pressure, velocity, density, and then calorific value. These are all the things that we generally measure. So spend some time in reading different textbooks apart from Hallman, because whatever I'm teaching is mostly from Hallman, and some from my experiences as an experimentalist, whatever I came to understand from my understanding, I'm trying to tell you. But as a student, you also spend some time looking at different textbooks, how they have portrayed about each topic. That will help you, okay? So just don't think that this class is just working principles. We will read it in one day. So don't need to attend the classes and all. That is not the correct way of looking at this particular. It's a very interesting subject. And the thing is, when you actually do experiments and all, like a PhD student and all, this will become very, very important subject compared to any other subject. It's not lesser than any other subjects, that's for sure. Any questions related to this class or any improvement suggestions? I would like to take. Okay. Just if you want to say something, just tell me now, so that we have 1 more month. Whatever the changes that we can make, I will try to make for the improvement. Any suggestions from your sides to improve the class? Because I'm seeing 40-45 students. That means somewhere I'm not up to the mark. That's what I feel. And the subject is there. Yes?
No, sir, you're fine. You're teaching fine. I don't know why they haven't joined. Possibly they were not concentrating on the last class, so definitely they must have closed it. Otherwise, it is fine, sir. We are learning what you're teaching.
You're not getting bored, right? So I'm trying to make it somewhat interesting. I mean, some points which are not available in the textbook, I'm trying to explain. Just like the pressure recovery and all. So that is a basic fundamental. Why we need this convergent section, divergent section? Many textbooks may not explain that. Okay, that is basically the understanding that comes from your experience. So such points are important because you may someday become, if you go to industry and all, you may be required to devise your own experimental setup or something. This will help you there. Okay, if you don't have any other questions, I will try to wind up the session. Sorry that I could not update the classes, the levels. Today I will do that. And anything related to lab, you have any questions in the lab? So anybody started doing the experimental calculations or graphs?
No, I don't think so. Like anyone would have started by now
Okay.
because we had already had one assignment to do. So
Okay.
basically, they will be doing
Okay.
that.
So please try to do at least one person because I want to see how those graphs has come, whether they are in
Sure, sir.
line
Sure,
with.
sir.
Yeah, please at least roughly you try to do and just put it up. And you can do that very simply in Excel. Just put the formulas and get the values. Later you can copy in the record and all. But if you do for one calculation, the other things just similar formulas, just put the values and you will get the final outputs and all. Okay, please follow that. Okay. And please take care of yourself. Thanks for attending this session. I will take a leave from you. Bye. Take care.